Hello friends, welcome to Apply IT. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate behavior of Promise.any method in JavaScript. You know that there are many static methods available in Promise class, and Promise.any is one of the methods related to concurrency. So in this video, we'll understand behavior of Promise.any method practically. If you are new and not aware, this is the 9th video in the series on JavaScript promises, where we try to understand advanced JavaScript concepts practically. If you haven't watched our previous videos, do watch them and then come back to this video for better understanding. You can find links for those videos in the video description. So let's jump into today's topic, understanding behavior of Promise.any practically. So first let's understand the problem that we are going to solve. Consider we have a huge telephone directory which contains phone numbers of different customers. And our task is we want to search a given phone number from this huge telephone directory. So if we assign this work to one person who will do search from this whole telephone directory, then it is going to take a lot of time. So instead of this, what we can do is we can divide this huge telephone directory into multiple parts like this. So generally a distributed system will have such directory available as multiple parts. For example, each state of a country can have its own directory of people who live in that particular region or in that particular state. If you have this huge telephone directory available as multiple parts, then we can assign one person who will do search in that particular part. For example, person 1 will do search in part 1 of the telephone directory, person 2 will do search in part 2 of this telephone directory, and person 3 will do search in part 3 of the telephone directory. And we can run all these tasks concurrently. And if any one person finds phone number is present in a particular part, is going to announce that I have found the customer's information, so all other persons do not need to do working, or all other have to stop working on searching the customer's name. So let's implement this solution. Now to simulate this solution, we create 3 API functions. For example, get customer API 1, which will do search in the part 1 of the telephone directory. We have get customer API 2, which will do search in part 2 of the directory, and get customer API 3, which will do search in part 3 of the directory. And to simulate this API call, each API function is going to take different amount of time. So through this function get customer API 1, we are simulating searching in part 1. As an example, I have taken only 2 numbers, but in practical situation we may have many records of the customers. So here we have records of 2 customers, and this given number we are searching from this list. Now to simulate this API call, here we use set timeout, which takes 3 seconds to complete. So basically using this set timeout, we are introducing a delay of 3 seconds, which indicates that this function is going to take 3 seconds for completing it. And after that delay of 3 seconds, we are searching the given number in this customers list using this function customers.find. And if customer is present, we return name of that customer. And if customer is not present, we say that customer not found in API 1. So this will be the error that will be reported by this get customer API 1 function. Now in the same way, we create other 2 API functions. So we have this get customer API 2 function, which is searching on this customers. And this customer's data would be different from this customer of data that is present in part 1. And here we are simulating that this function is taking 4 seconds to complete. And here we return response that if customer is not found, we return response that customer is not found in API number 2. In the same way, we have searching in part 3. Again, we take phone number as input and we search in this data. So this customer's data is different from part 1 and part 2. And here we are simulating that this API call is taking 5 seconds. And again, we search the given number in this customers list. And if it is found, we return name of the customer. And if it is not found, we return appropriate error message. So in this case, we return customer not found in API 3. Now let's write a wrapper function called get customer name, which will take customer's number as input. And now this function is going to do search concurrently. So in this situation, we use Promise.any, and as an input, we pass an array of promises. Here we pass 3 promises. We make call to these 3 different API functions, and we pass this input customer number into each API function. Now this each API function is returning a promise, as we have seen in this particular function. This function is marked as async, so automatically the result will be considered as a promise. Customer's name is found, we return that name of customer. Otherwise, we return error message that customer not found in any API. So let's understand this Promise.any. This Promise.any is a static method. It takes an iterable, that is an array, for example, an array of promises as input, and the method returns a single promise. Let's understand possible return values. If any one input promises get fulfilled, the method returns a fulfilled promise and all other promises are discarded. And if all input promises get rejected, then method returns a rejected promise with an error containing an array of rejection regions. So let's search for one phone number. We search a number that is present in part 2. Here we are calling that wrapper function, which is doing search concurrently. We say get customer name 101, which is returning a promise. We have marked this as async function, so this function is going to return a promise. That's why we use here await keyword. So we pass customer's number 101 to this function, and as a result we are expecting name of the customer. Now if that function is throwing an error, we handle it using this try catch block. So if there is error, we display that error situation which is returned from this particular promise. Now because we want to keep track of how much time is taken by this activity, we are using this console.time and console.timeend functions, and we learned how to use these functions in our previous video. So you can watch that video in case this is new for you. So when we see this practically, we'll understand how much time will be taken by this particular task. Just remember that this number 101 is present in part 2. So let's see that function which is searching in part 2. So this get customer API 2 is a function that is searching in part 2 of the data, and we find that it is taking 4 seconds for completing. So whenever we are going to use this function get customer name, we'll observe that how much time it is taking in completing that operation. So let's understand this practically. Let's go to Google Chrome and try to understand the behavior of Promise.any. So we have this Google Chrome. We open developers tools using this right click and inspect. We click on this console and we get this developers console. So let's write function one by one into this developers console. So we have this get customer API 1, which is simulating search operation, and it takes 3 seconds to complete. Now let's write get customer API 2, which is searching given number in part 2, and for simulating that it is taking 4 seconds. Now we write get customer API 3 function, which takes 5 seconds for searching in part 3. Now we write a wrapper function called get customer name, which is searching given customer's number in all these 3 different parts concurrently. Now let's use that get customer name wrapper function and try to understand what will be the behavior in case when we search a number 101 which is present in part 2. So you can see that we are getting name of the customer, and it is taking approximately 4 seconds for completing it. It is taking 4 seconds because part 2 is taking 4 seconds for simulating an API call. And we observe that once we have got result in part 2, we are not waiting for part 3, which is taking 5 seconds for completing. Now let's take another phone number. So let's search a number, say 111, which is present in part 3. So let's verify that this number is present in part 3 and how much time it is taking in searching this number from its data. So we can see here number 111 is present in part 3 and it is taking 5 seconds for completing it. So let's understand this practically. We go to Google Chrome and we understand the behavior of Promise.any in case number 2. So we write a code which searches number 111 from all the records concurrently. So I'm going to hit enter key. Observe how much time it is taking. So we found that it is taking approximately 5 seconds for completing it. And we also get name of the customers who is the owner of this number. Now let's consider a failing case. So we search for a number 333 which is not present in any part. So let's verify that this 333 is not present in any part. So we have part 3 which is not containing number 333. We have part 2 that is not containing number 333. And we have part 1 which is also not containing number 333. So in this case, all promises will get failed. So let's understand this practically. We go to Google Chrome and try to understand this practically. So now we search for a number 333. As we have seen that it is not present in any part, let's understand behavior of Promise.any, how much time it is taking in completing this task. So we find that customer is not found in any API or in any part, and it is taking approximately 5 seconds to complete. Now because Promise.any is waiting till all the promises get rejected in the rejection situation. So that's why it has to search in part 1. If it is failing, it will also search part 2. It is also failing. Then it is waiting for part 3, which takes 5 seconds for providing the result. So that's why here we get 5 seconds for completing this task. So now let's compare behavior of Promise.any with Promise.all. So earlier we have seen behavior of Promise.all. So we found that if all the promises are fulfilled, then only we'll get the written promise is successful, and if any one promise is failing or any one promise is rejected, then the final response will be the failure. In case of Promise.any, if any one promise is successful, then final result will be successful. And here you can see that once this promise is resolving, we immediately return the response. We are not waiting for response of the third API operation. And in case of the failure, we can return response from Promise.any only after all API functions are returning a rejected promise. So this is behavior of Promise.any. If we put the behavior of Promise.all and Promise.any side by side, we find like this. So to summarize, Promise.any method can run all API calls concurrently, which Promise.all method was also doing. But with Promise.all, if any one API fails, that is an input promise is rejected, all other API calls or say promises will be discarded, and the final result will be the first rejected promise. Whereas in case of Promise.any, if any one API succeeds, the result will be successful and all other API calls or say promises will be discarded. And if all API fails, then only the result will be failure in case of Promise.any. If you like this video, do hit the like button and let me know in the comment section how this video was useful to you. If you have not subscribed this channel, do subscribe it and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching and happy learning. We'll see you in the next video.